Hello and welcome. My name is Teresa from the blog and YouTube channel freetoflower.com, where I share all about our simple living on our European farm, homesteading how-tos, and recipes from scratch. Please remember to hit the subscribe button down below to never miss a new video. Today, I want to share with you a few of my thoughts on how I see American freedom after living in Europe. So, if you've been following me for any amount of time, you will know that I am originally Czech, born and raised. However, I spent close to 15 years living abroad in the UK, in the US, in France, and other places, and ultimately ended up marrying this handsome man. Well, not this one, that's my son, but his father, who is an American. We've lived in Europe full-time now for close to 2 years. However, we visited for extended periods of time, for 6 months or 4 months, for several years before moving here. And obviously all of his family is still in the US, whereas all of mine is here. We started off our marriage by living in the US for 5 years or so before moving here. And so this gives me a pretty unique perception of life in both places. One thing that I always say when people ask me, what do you miss most? Right after Starbucks drive-thru, sorry, not sorry, I say some of the freedoms, because living in Europe has a lot of perks and there are so many charming elements to it, but European countries as of right now lack the degree of freedom that is available to you or to me as a US citizen living in America. Living in America allows you the freedom to carry responsibility for yourself and your family much more than living, for example, in the Czech Republic. Now, there are two sides to this, of course. On the one side, when the state, quote unquote, protects you, you can't really ever get into any real trouble, like with your health or anything like that. On the other hand, the state also gets to tell you what to do and what not to do with your health. Under normal circumstances, this usually is not an issue, but we've all seen things get quite out of hand over the past 4 years, especially when it comes to our health. The second area where I see a huge difference in terms of freedom is the freedom of speech. And the recent developments in the US have me very optimistic about the return of true freedom of speech to the United States. However, here you are not really free to say anything, which is such a disappointment given this country's history of communism and oppression. The explosive freedom that the Czech Republic experienced in the 90s, it comes as a huge disappointment that you aren't really allowed to say anything and everything and act that way. And I don't mean hate speech, and I don't mean anything that hurts anybody, just things pertaining to you and your family. But speaking in general terms, I find sometimes interesting, most of the times not very helpful. So I have a few specific examples of how living in the United States provides a lot more freedom than living in Europe. I will preface this by saying I love living in Europe. There are so many great things about living in Europe, and I think I'm going to make a whole separate video about ways in which living in Europe is better than in the United States. Every place has something. But when it comes to freedom specifically, here are the ways that I perceive there to be more freedom in the US than where I live currently. Number one, health insurance. Where we live, you are required by law to have state health insurance. If you don't get it, you are very heavily penalized, and basically everybody has to have some. Everybody has to be insured. And if you are new to this concept, you'll say, which is what people here say, well, what's wrong about that? Well, it's not really free. What if I don't want health insurance? What if I don't use any of the services provided by health insurance? me raising my hand up in the back of the room. Hello, I free birthed my baby, and that's the life I live. I don't use any of it. So currently we are paying out of pocket for Micah's health insurance, and while it's not very expensive, which is great, we absolutely have to pay it, even though we know we will never use it. There's no option of just like a catastrophic or any of the other myriad of options that are available in the US. Hand in hand goes the big V, the shots, the word that I'm not even allowed to say, I don't think, although every platform's different, but you all know what I mean. Oh my goodness. When they say mandatory, they really mean mandatory. Now, there are obviously ways around it. There always are, but in the United States, it is so much easier to opt out, to get an exemption for a number of different reasons, actually, and just to not participate in this particular practice. The landscape is changing in the 2020 events aftermath for sure, and I think that when some of the new studies come out, that they surely will in the next year, I think we will see a change, but for now, this is where we're at. This beet grew in my garden, and I used it to make delicious borscht soup. It's so good, and I will link it in the description box below. Okay, next, standing out of the norm in any way. And I do think that this is maybe an overhang of communism, but if you are standing out of the norm, especially in certain areas like, for example, health, or like free birthing your baby, like birthing your baby all alone, oh my goodness, I think people thought I was completely nuts, even though in the United States it's now actually a growing trend. And yes, we're still a minority for now, but here it was just people were just jarred. This goes for almost anything that you do that stands out of the norm. And that just goes to show you that everybody kind of repeats the same thing that everybody else does in a way, and that doesn't speak freedom to me. Collective responses during times of crisis, like what we've had recently with the big C word. Everybody, a complete sheep. They followed the rules blindly. They didn't question. They obeyed. They had all of their freedoms stripped away from them. They gave them up, actually, pretty happily. Not trusting governmental organizations. Once again, this is very foreign to most people, not everybody, but there is a big trust in the government versus a slightly different perspective that a lot of people in the United States have. That is, in my opinion, based in freedom and the desire for more freedom. And then the last one, slightly different, freedom of space. This is kind of obvious, but there's just so much more space in the United States, and so you are free to do with your space a lot more than you are here. Here you're governed by so many different rules and regulations, and government is big, and there's heritage sites, and people generally live much closer to one another. They don't have as much land, which often leads to things like reporting your neighbor to the government for something so silly. I could talk on this topic for a lot longer. Maybe I'll do a part 2 video, but if you enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe button so that you never miss a new video. I post a new one up on here every single week.